All right, Lon, I think we'll get ready in about 1 minute if you're ready.
Yep, I'm here and I have my coffee, so I'm ready.
Yep, I just got some coffee too.
Spilled it on my foot.
Oh, you spilled it on your foot. Oh no.
Hey, you mind if I do a little sales promotion to this?
Oh, I actually pulled a copy out so that I could do that.
I'm going to do that.
Good. I've got this one. I've got the other one too.
Yeah.
I've got this one out too.
Yep. Okay.
Good morning, Mark.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I had to switch computers. My video went off when I went into the small group.
Oh no.
Everyone
right,
said,
Lon.
Mark, how come you're not talking?
All right,
That's
Lon, you're 10
what
o'clock.
I hear.
All right, we up?
Yep, you're up.
All right.
Want me to give an introduction to Lon, or?
Yeah, sure, Paul. You did
Okay.
such a wonderful job. That was so nice.
All right. Welcome back, everybody. Just to make sure you're in the right session, this is the workshop entitled The Best Conservation Tools You and Your Lake Association. And our next speaker will be Lon Nordeen from Pleasant Lake, Michigan. Lon has lived on the water for a dozen years and was honored with MLSA Riparian of the Year in 2015 for his work protecting the lake. He's been a board member on MLSA for 5 years, is also on the board of the Michigan Waterfront Alliance and the Michigan DNR AIS Task Force. AIS means Aquatic Invasive Species. He is also the VP of the Pleasant Lake Property Owners Association and serves as a lake manager for the Special Assessment District. Okay, Lon, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody.
Oh, Lon, we lost you.
Uh-oh.
No, you gotta, you might need to turn your input up. You were doing fine before.
I'm on.
Yeah, I know, you just keep clipping out. If you go to the little down caret next to the mute button, you can go to audio settings. And then you can see what your microphone input level is. You may need to turn that up.
Have we ever known Lon to be a loss for words?
Really?
I heard you just now. Maybe it'll be okay.
Okay. Here, I'll get closer to the machine.
Yeah, it just sounds very muffled. Am I the only one hearing that, or is he muffled?
No, he's muffled. I'm going to try and turn off his video to see if maybe it's a bandwidth issue and see if his audio will come better without video. So,
Okay.
Lon, can you try and talk now? I'm just going to let
How
that
about-
video go off and see if that
Is
helps.
this better?
No.
It still keeps muffling. You sound okay at first, and then you get muffled after.
Well, okay, tell me how to do it. I'm in the system. What about audio settings? All the way up.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's all the way up. I'm sorry.
He had great audio just a minute ago.
How about-
Lon, can you log out and come back in, and let's see if we can go that route.
Well, okay. All right.
We had a couple suggestions that everybody else mute their lines, so just maybe try that. Try muting your line. I don't see how that could hurt. It might help us. So if you could do that.
And if he can't get in and we get his audio to work, we can see if he can call in, and then he can have it up on his slides. He can be logged in, but we can use the audio from the dial-in option. That's another option.
Yes,
and yes,
Tell you what, send me the number and I will call in.
Actually, talk again, Lon, because that was great.
Okay, can you hear me?
Oh.
I'm really close to the machine here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'll put the charts up and let's go.
Great, you're ready to go.
Yep, but I don't have any display right now, so
Well, that's okay. We're on just the introduction slide.
yeah, but I don't see any slides, so.
Hmm.
Well, let me help Lon. And Lon, I'll read the slide and you can add anything to it. So Lon is going to talk about lake associations. The type.
There we go. I got it. Okay.
Okay,
Go to the next chart, number 2.
okay, great.
All right, types of associations. This is where I would, hello everybody, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can still hear you.
Okay, so I was going to ask, this chart is up now.
Oh, no, Lon. Okay.
I can cover this, Melissa.
Okay, all right. I'm sorry, Lon. We're really struggling with you. If you go back to the program email, there's a call-in number. There's a call-in sheet too, so you can call in.
Okay,
I'm sorry, Lon. Go ahead, Paul.
Okay. In terms of lake associations, and that's really the biggest theme that we have in this 3-hour workshop, is that the best conservation tool, we believe, is your lake association. It helps facilitate the types of things that Melissa talked about. It'll also facilitate the types of things that I will talk about in section 3. Lake associations, there are some that are actually homeowners association, improvement associations. They are established legally because of the plat in the subdivision and the condominium. They're legal, they're enforceable, and they have a life of their own, and you have to join. You can't be a homeowner, you can't be a property owner unless you're part of the association, and you have to do what the association says. There's lake improvement boards. Those do exist in some places. Those are not very common, and they don't really impact the rules of the road, so to speak, or the rules of the water in terms of what people can do with their property or how they form and organize. There's partnerships where you kind of basically form a partnership, a nonprofit group. But probably the most common in the state of Michigan are voluntary lake associations. In MLSA, what we find is that most of our members are voluntary lake associations. You get a group of people, they volunteer to form an association. The dues are not mandatory. They do collect dues, or they can collect dues, but there's no legal basis to put a lien against the property, and there's no legal basis to enforce any regulations on what you do with your land. You're subject only to the local zoning. Let's move on to the next slide, Melissa, please. So Lon, if you get back on, feel free to take over at any point in time. But the roles of lake associations, and these are a large laundry list. You don't have to do every single one of them, but you certainly should be looking at doing a lot of them. The more the better. This is a case where it's more is better. Lon is suggesting that your lake association should monitor lake conditions and the health of the lake, water level and flow analysis issues. And what's important there is, in fact, there are many lakes that have legally set water levels. And there's usually some kind of special assessment district that controls that. And in our time period of heavy water levels or high water levels, maintaining the drains, the weirs, the dams, whatever the case may be, is extremely crucial. And lake associations should take a proactive role to make sure that the drain commissioner, the water resource commissioner, whoever it is that is charged with maintaining that lake level does their job. And what we've been finding in some of the smaller lakes around the state is that some of the drains have not been cleaned out. There's logs and there's a lot of obstructions that have occurred. And so places where the drain commissioners have done the required maintenance on a regular level, they are able to go ahead and keep that water flowing and keep the water levels where they need to be. One of the key issues that's happening now around the state, it's becoming more and more of a challenge, is inspection and monitoring for invasive species. MLSA has supported the CLMP program, the Exotic Plant Watch program. That program continues this year, even if the CLMP program was paused as we wait for funding in a new program for all the other parameters in 2021. But if you aren't going out around your lake at least once or twice a year and casting the rake and pulling up what you can find on the bottom, aquatic invasive species could come into your lake and take hold, and it's going to be a real issue for you going forward, because as we all know, to eliminate and eradicate AIS is extremely challenging. In fact, it's probably impossible, and that's a real issue. Some lake associations have actually taken on the responsibility to clean boats, make sure that boats are decontaminated, disinfected, both coming in and leaving the water. I know that the MLSA treasurer for our former president, Mike Gallagher, was very instrumental in getting a boat decontamination disinfection station in his lake up down here in Southwest Michigan. Many of the townships in the Grand Traverse area, Lake Leelanau area, Leelanau County, the Glen Lake people, the Lake Leelanau people, they have ordinances that require such decontamination, disinfection. We have some examples of that on our website. And Tricia Denton, I believe, Tricia Denton is with us today. She is a resource for some of those issues also. You can get a hold of her. Lon suggests also that algae analysis is very important. The state of Michigan does have a HAB, harmful algal bloom website that has a significant amount of information. They also are supposed to be going out and inspecting lakes at random. Of course, they haven't done that because of the COVID impact this year, but we are doing a better job of helping you identify or helping lake associations identify what's going on with the algae. Some is good, some is bad. Some lake associations undertake the maintenance of fish habitat and stocking. They don't rely on the DNR to stock their lakes. They obtain the necessary permits and acquire the necessary species and introduce those into the lake for an enhancement of fishing. He does indicate that the shoreline analysis and resident education is something that the Lake Association can promote. The presentation by Melissa earlier, as well as much of everybody's discussion, that's a huge issue. And as opposed to a single individual taking responsibility for that, Lon is suggesting that lake associations make that front and center, that they talk about that and encourage that. And people should listen to what the Lake Association is saying about the shoreline issues and maintaining natural shorelines. Development and implementation of lake management plans. Many lakes hire a professional to do that. They contract with many of the limnology firms, the restorative lake firms that are out there to do their lake management plans. And you also have, if you have got some very savvy people, you can do that on your own. So it's kind of a hybrid situation, but you should have a plan as to how you're going to manage your lake both this summer, next summer, as well as 5 years down the road. The other aspect for lake associations is the coordination with government. and the support, the health, safety, and general welfare of the lake. I'll be talking about a lot of those topics in the third segment of this presentation. And of course, there's always the networking. I think that if anybody's had a chance to see what happens up in Leelanau County, Grand Traverse County, those lake associations up in the northwest part of the state have done an absolutely outstanding job of networking and trying to get a regional perspective and regional coordination to protect the beauty and the conditions of those wonderful lakes up there. An area that's ripe for work is the southeast portion. Oakland County I think has over 1,000 lakes, and if anybody has a different number, tell me if I'm right or wrong on that. But they were successful in getting their county to pay for the CLMP registration fees, as well as the fees for conducting many of the parameters of the CLMP program. So, you know, when you can get groups working together, it's extremely important. And there's been lots of talk about the conservation districts, and that's very, very true. One of the untapped future resources that MLSA is going to try to work with and encourage you to work with are your conservation districts. Benzie County Conservation District is extremely proactive. They do some great things for the lakes up in the northwest part of our state. There are some conservation groups in mid-Michigan that are trying to do that. The Cass County Conservation District here, where I'm from, in the very southwest part of the state, they're starting to become very conscious of working with the riparians on the lakes. And so there's a huge benefit when you can get that coordination with others. And Lon, I see you're back on. Are you able to speak?
I'm on the phone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'll let you take over.
All right. I'm sorry for the technical issues. Let's go to the next chart. Okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can do for our lake associations. One of the big things is no matter how many people are on your lake association, let's have a plan. So MLSA has identified more than 700 different types of lake associations in Michigan. They range all the way from HOA type organizations, which we'll talk about, which are in the deed and the contract and their legal documents, to small volunteer groups and conservation groups. But one of the biggest things is, do you have a goal? Do you have a vision? Do you have a plan? And we've been talking about that earlier with trying to get your neighbors and your fellow lake residents to work together for improved conservation. So how do you do this? One of the things you got to do is to look at what is your goal for your lake and the various goals. What's your structure and how do you measure success? All right, let's go to the next chart. All right, we're going to talk. I'd like Mark Teicher, if he's up, to talk a little bit about the different legal elements of lake associations.
Sure. Hi, this is Mark Teicher. Thanks, Lon. So I'm an attorney on the MLSA board, which is, I guess, why Lon pointed to me. But what I wanted to point out is that there are different types of ways you can help your lake. One is that if you want to set up an SAD, a special assessment district, where you're taxing yourself, there's two ways to do it. The most common way is that you have to have a petition and more or less a vote of the people who are going to be taxed, and then typically a township and perhaps a county have to approve it. There's also an SAD statute that allows you to do it without ever having an actual vote and requirement of a petition, where a township on its own through public hearings can simply start a special assessment district. Because sometimes it's difficult to get people to vote for something that perhaps is hard to understand, such as eliminating invasive plant species. There's also, besides the Special Assessment District, which is Public Act 188, you might hear of Public Act 188 of 1954. That's the SAD and public improvements. There's also lake improvement boards, and a lake improvement board is a very formal entity through a statute that requires representation by not only the lake residents, the riparians, but also different board members. These two types of entities for these statutes are mandatory membership by everyone. I see there's a question about the SAD without having a petitioner vote. That would be Public Act 188 of 1954, as opposed to Public Act 451 of 1994, which is the Lake Improvement Board, our inland lake improvements. Both of those automatically go on your taxes, so everybody participates. So there's usually funds as far as being able to get the job done. But it does both require a lot of cooperation by your township officials. And otherwise, to make it real quick, which Paul already talked about as Lon was having the technical problems, is that all of the homeowners associations, which are not mandatory, means that your members, your people don't have to join, don't have to pay dues, unless it's actually in your deed that says that. Otherwise, it's all voluntary, and that, of course, can be a big issue. The other thing that I think Lon had on his first slide about partnerships is that as a lake association, having a partnership, particularly like with your watershed council, and meeting with them by Zoom or in person, hopefully in person sooner or later, that watershed councils are can be very strong entities that can help lake improvement. And otherwise, I don't want to take any more of your time, Lon. So unless you want me to address something else. Thanks, Lon.
Thank you. All right, well, let me keep going here. Probably the biggest message that I would like the people who are on the call to think about is, do we really know our lake, and do we do everything we can to protect it? Do we understand what the condition is? And do we all work together? And as Lon and others have talked about, cooperation is a big key. Now, I'm going to get into some lessons that we have done on our lake, which is only a 200-acre lake, and we have a volunteer organization, literally with only 65 members out of the about 140 homes on the lake. But we have developed a very powerful impact because we have coordinated, as Mark pointed out and others, with the county, the state. And let me give you one hint that really helps. If you can get to know your state rep and your state senator, invite them to your meetings, and also invite in, as Mark pointed out, the water commissioner, that expands your footprint. All right, let's go to our next chart. Okay, this is just a little bit of information that Mark was pointing out about our particular SAD, Special Assessment District. We are in cycle 2, so the second 5-year period. Our lake has struggled with invasive species and weed growth. We have data all the way back to the 1930s and 40s that this is a, quote, weedy lake. And some of that has to do with runoff and the condition of our lake and the fact that we have a lot of farms. So we have tried things like weevils. We have tried cutting. We have tried chemicals on a voluntary basis. And I think most of you know that if you've done this on your lake, it's really hard to pass a hat and ask for contributions. So we have gone to a special assessment district, and it has been tough to evaluate and to sell because you know how it is, taxes. But it took a while, but we were able to sell that. So just overhead image of our lake. We have quite a an invasive species problem, and if we left it alone, you could not drive a boat on our lake by June 1st. Usually by July 4th weekend, it was tough. So as you can see that we use the process to go through the township and have our actual Washtenaw County group manage the collection of the funds, and we have an outside set of experts that come and evaluate. And the way I would like to put it is sort of like a medical situation, which is, would you just go take a sharp object and cut out a tumor if you saw it? No. Would want to go get evaluations to find out what is the problem. I know that's a little rough analogy, but our lake recommended that we have experts come in and do an assessment before we do treatments, and then do a later assessment to evaluate the success or lack of success. And that's what we do every year, and we've done for 8 years now. We have had reasonably good success depending upon the year, but some years, as you all know, with the water being high and heavy rain, we've had harmful algae blooms and other things. So every year is different. All right, let's go to next chart. One thing that I really want to point out that all the people on the phone can use to their advantage is education, cooperation, and as I said earlier, bringing in political. On the left, you see a number of our board members working with the Huron River Watershed Council, looking at green infrastructure planning. I don't know how many of you reached out to other groups, but that really was helpful to try to look at the whole lake environment as an entity. Entity meaning that water comes in, people live there, what are the influences, and get with the Planning Commission and the other groups like the Water Commissioner to look at what can we do over a 20-year plan. We also, even though we're a small lake, we've done quite a bit of organizing, and we've held conferences, and that's what I'm suggesting, is that you have the option to hold your own regional conference like you're doing here. And I would say that even this last weekend, you can see on the picture on the right, we had Representative Donna Lisinski, our state rep, come and speak to 40 of us about her efforts to help us and our efforts to help ourselves. All right, next chart, please. So why hold a special event? Every lake is different, and you have unique conditions. And if your lake association is organized and wants to do something like this, it can be done, and it's actually quite successful if you organize it properly and you get buy-in from the members and the local government. Like this larger conference, there's a lot of work involved in this, but it doesn't cost that much money. And if you develop a plan and you work in a cooperative manner, it will work out and you will have a good turnout. And I think most people would find it beneficial. One of the things I see that's critical is that as several people talked about in the breakout sessions, some places have significant diversity of opinions about a lot of issues, and we have that on our lake too. But what we found is by bringing people together and educating them with newsletters, with data, and we did highlight some of the shorelines that were good and some of the shorelines that were bad, and then explain the difference. So again, cooperating helps. But another trick that we found that's very helpful, build a good relationship with your local newspapers and media outlets and social media, and promote. So that's worked well for us. Some of this will take a lot of work, and you have to think out of the box because you have to plan. But we have been pretty successful at that. The other thing I will say that helps, again, is once you get media clips and you get social media coverage, you can use that to support your outreach efforts. That includes newsletters, social media contacts, getting data out to the members so that they feel like they're part of the plan, part of the game, and they have a say. One of the things that I think is very important, though, is that you have a group that's willing to do this hard work, and you also have a plan. Okay, next chart. Some of this is what we've talked about, just making sure that you bring in the government, you bring in other experts. In our case, one example is we had the Huron River Watershed Council, but there's many, many groups that you can bring in to be experts. We've had speakers from Michigan State, we've had speakers from other places. That really helps because bring in a top expert to lecture on some of the issues that you're concerned about. We've also had experts come in and talk about the shoreline improvement. And we actually gave a report on what the structure and situation was on our lake. So again, make a plan, work it, and secure feedback from the decision makers. That includes the government and the local population. I mean, we've had feedback that says this was great, but not enough people showed up, or we've got to tell us, or don't schedule it at the same time as you have a Lions football game. Next chart, please. Here's another example of a water preservation conference that we held. We had breakout sessions just like we had earlier. And again, I'm just looking at what we've done, but look at the mix of people that showed up. And it's interesting in the picture right there, the lady at the end who's got her hand out is the water commissioner. So you can bring lots of groups in, and they will cooperate and work with you. We had the media there. We had all of our local government, both the planning commission and the board, and we had residents. And I believe that everyone found it beneficial. Now, it does take a lot of work, and you'll see that the outcome will be beneficial, but it does take some planning.
We had a quick question about who the experts were that came in to talk about shorelines.
We've had several, we've had Michigan State come in, and we've also had some of the vendors that provide some of the services, and we actually put both together so that it was both theory and it was like case examples of projects that vendors have done. And I'm not going to get into companies because I don't want to promote certain companies, but that's the approach that we took, which was to show pictures of what we did on our lake, because there's a survey that you can do. And then we had a mix of people come in and talk. Does that answer the question?
I think so. It was just generally who you had come in and talk. So good.
All right, next chart. Okay, here are some of the issues we've been talking about that I believe is common to most lakes, okay? Some people are lucky they have collective sewage treatment systems. We don't. And one of our big areas is that Washington County goes around and checks the septic situation. And we have some that failed. And that we believe has helped help create situations, even maybe harmful algae bloom conditions. If anybody has a septic field, you know that it costs a lot of money to replace these, minimum 30,000. And in very small lots or other situations, you have to have engineered fields. So that is one of the things that we struggle with on our lake. Another one is road runoff. We have several areas around the lake where there's huge runoff situations where from your boat or even from the area, you can see what I call the weed mustache, where there's just a huge plume from runoff from the road. And again, that goes back to people using chemicals to support their lawn growth. Another situation we have on our lake, which may be common to many people, but we have farm and agricultural situations where we have a large farm where they have 900 head of cattle and they have to put the effluent somewhere, and it's often on the field and it runs in the lake, and there's lots of discussions because of the Right to Farm Act about whether they contribute to vegetation growth. We're not getting direct feedback on this call yet, but I can imagine that most people feel that farm runoff would help with the growth, but it's something that's really tough to prove, and it does create a political issue. A real story, about 3 years ago, my cousin and I, after a rain, went out and 12 points around the lake where it rained. 9 of them showed over 1,500 E. coli level. That caused some consternation on our lake with the residents, with the government. So we still have issues. We're working on that. Let's see, I think several people have mentioned the harmful algae bloom situation. 2 years ago, we had a really dangerous 3-spot HAB on our lake. And one of the residents thought somebody dumped paint in the lake when they first saw it. They actually called the Michigan State Police, and the guy put his hand in. That's not paint, that's something else. I mean, that's funny, but it's not funny, because they told me that a lot of our residents were not educated in terms of what an HAB is, what causes it. One of the things we later found out is it was in a spot where it was shallow. There was a failing septic system, and the birds happened to congregate. There were a whole group of maybe 30 geese. So we're not sure what the cause was, but it was bad, and it closed down our lake right before Memorial Day weekend. Now on our lake, we also have an industrial plant, which is the Consumers Energy gas plant, where they suck the water out, or they've done that since 1947, and they use it to cool their propulsion equipment, and they put it back in at a higher temperature than they took it out. So that hasn't helped. Now, the other two things I wanted to mention is that we happen to have pipelines and this pumping station here. We haven't had any big accidents yet, but we're concerned about that. And any building, we all know, and development impacts wetlands and streams. So I'm assuming that most people on the phone will have similar conditions on their lake. And I forgot to go back and talk about heavy boats and wave action, because we have that too. All right, next chart, please. All right, just to highlight the pipeline issue that we mentioned, and everybody has a different condition, but this is where we are, southwest of Ann Arbor, and our lake is that little spot right next to where all the confluence of the pipelines are. So we are concerned, and we are working with our elected officials and other groups to try to reduce the threat that we have. So the question I have to everybody on the phone are, what are the challenges you have on your lake Are they similar? Are they different? And how can we all work together to reduce the impact on your lake? Next chart, please. Okay, these are just some recommendations that I would give from our experience here, that please go work with your township and your county to make sure that you have an input on the zoning and other government issues, because this is a long-term plan. And if you don't do that, you won't be as able to control the situation as you would if you let it go. And I know that we have issues where people are concerned about political impacts, but if you don't go out and take control of your lake issues, someone else will. So it's important to go out and talk to the people in your lake association to say, what are our perceived or real problems, and develop a relationship with your government and your neighbors to make sure that your input about protecting your lake is clear with the people who set up the plans for your zoning. How do you do that? Well, we go to every zoning meeting, planning commission, board, and if we don't feel like we're working effectively as a team, our lake association writes letters, we go out and use the media, and we encourage a cooperative outcome. It's not easy, and sometimes it's controversial, but through planning, persistence, and communications, we've delivered some good messages, and eventually we work in a team fashion. It's up to you to protect the property value of your property and your lake. And your lake association is a key way to do that. Again, ours is small. It's not a legal HAB or anything, but we've had an impact. But the key thing is that you need to go to the meetings, and you need to voice your opinions to the government officials, and you need to work as a team. Next chart, please.
That's actually your last chart, Lon. So
Okay.
I didn't know if you wanted to take that time for people to talk about some of their challenges. We do have, I would say, about 15 minutes before we would take another break until Paul's session, or if people want to move right into more of the what you can do instead of dwelling on the challenges, we can move right into Paul's session as well.
Well, let's ask the audience if they have things they want to bring up, and I'm sorry for the technical issues.
I was wondering, Lon, are you having can you hear yourself? Are you having some feedback?
I do get some feedback, yes.
Okay. Do you have your computer volume turned off? Because you might be hearing yourself through the phone and through the computer, which might be distracting.
Okay, my speakers are off on the computer. Is that better?
Does it sound better to you?
No change.
Oh, okay. All right. I didn't know if that was sometimes you get that delay. I thought maybe you were having that. Okay, so did anybody, we've been having quite a robust side conversation on the chat with some of the issues people are seeing on their lakes. Are there any challenges or any things that you would like to bring up? It's kind of a ask the audience time here.
Well, I'd like to make a comment. I serve as the chair of the Pickerel-Kimball Lake Improvement Board, and many of what you talked about here in your slides, Lon, are has really been taken over by the Lake Improvement Board. The association is not involved with many of the things that you mentioned. We We hired a full-time consultant to do our weed control analysis. They've now developed a lake management plan, but this is all coming through the Lake Improvement Board, though. It isn't, well, for whatever reason, many of these tasks have been either taken over or taken up by the Lake Improvement Board. So I think they can certainly work with you. We should work together. Obviously, we're in the same, same lakes. But I think the association has somewhat different items on their agenda that the Lake Improvement Board does.
Well, William, many lakes simply will not get into a Lake Improvement Board situation because there's a resistance from the county and the Water Resource Commissioner to the Drain Commissioner to do that. What we find is that, most of our lakes, the lake associations are the act, and they work with their township. For those Lake Improvement Board situations, that's great if that could happen. But we also have to deal with the scores and scores of lakes where that's simply not going to happen in the next 10 years. So, we're talking a hybrid, or at least a broad spectrum here of ways to deal with things. It's good that your lake has done that, but your experience is somewhat isolated compared to a lot of the lakes that we try to deal with.
Well, and I would say too that I think a lake board and an association could work together. I mean, even if the association is more of a social format, there can still be some educational components to your social agenda that would be complementary to the lake board, I would think.
And the lake board is supposed to have an
association
member on it, somebody representing the lake. So hopefully that person is part of a lake association board.
Yeah, that's me. I am the one that was appointed by the association to serve on the lake board. Just so, I think you just touched on this a little bit, but we do have, the Lake Improvement Board does have on our board anyway, we have the Drain Commissioner for the county, we have a county commissioner, we have a representative, we have 2 townships on our lakes, and each township has a representative on the board, and then the one from the Lake Association, or Lakes, I should say, Association, which is me. But so we do have some connection with some of the people that we need to work with. Certainly the Drain Commissioner and the County Commissioner. So that Lake Improvement Board does make that connection for the riparians.
And I think, I think Lake Improvement Boards have a distinct role. Just have to realize that, many of the lakes and the members, the property owners that we also deal with, and again, it's a broad spectrum, they're afraid of big government. And so if they can deal at just the township level, they're happy to perhaps to do that. But when you start getting the county involved in all this stuff, they get concerned about big government. So it's a question of, where you are, what the culture is. And so, we try to speak to all the possibilities that lakes can use.
Yeah, I want to add that you're lucky that you have that well-organized situation, as Paul just pointed out. When you look at the lake structure in Michigan, there's only a small number of lakes of the total 11,000 population that are really big and organized. And so part of our job, as I see it, and I think the other board members would support this, outreach to show you how to do it. Now, some people are way ahead of what I was talking about, and that's good. But part of our job is to educate and encourage others to move along, because Paul pointed out, on my lake, the township board is scared of the county's impact. And so it was really hard to sell the idea of the SAD because they felt like they would control. They being the township government.
Melissa, this is Rex. Paul, I also serve as a chairman of a lake improvement board up in Alcona and Iosco counties on Cedar Lake. And one of the things I want to point out about lake improvement boards is we have a limited scope that we can operate within. We have to respond to lake improvement projects. One of those, of course, is aquatic invasive species control, which was the primary reason that our lake board got founded probably 20 years ago. It cannot fulfill a lot of the functions that an active lake association can do. We can't touch zoning. We can't influence politicians other than the fact that 6 of them serve on my board with me. So we're a bit of a niche organization, and without an active and involved lake association, you know, a lake is really at risk. So don't think that if you've got a lake improvement board that all your problems are over with. They're not. There's an awful lot of things that a lake board can't do. One of them, for instance, is controlling and managing a lake level on a lake with a court-ordered lake level. Lake boards can't touch that because of the way the state has set up the statutes for lakes in Michigan. However, we can work on watershed improvements to support lake levels, but we can't actively control or manage the lake level because that's the exclusive domain of the drain commissioners and the counties involved. It's not a lake board issue. So lake boards allow you to collect taxes a lot easier and focus that money on things that are the big projects on a lake, such as aquatic invasive species control. Matter of fact, while we were sitting here this morning, I just got an invoice come in for treatments on Cedar Lake, and it's a $72,000 invoice for about 150 acres that we had to treat on an 1,100 acre lake. So having that money through our special assessment district allows us to do that type of stuff. And it's a lot more efficient than trying to do it through voluntary contributions of a lake association, or even through the special assessment district effects is the same, whether it's a Part 309 or the other statute that was mentioned earlier. But it does allow you to take on big projects and react and manage accordingly within the scope that you're allowed to operate under the statute. You got to have a good, strong lake association in addition to an effective lake board to make the two work correctly together.
We have a couple of questions that just came in about lake levels. I think I heard you, Rex, that the lake board is not able to do anything with the lake level. So the first question was, can the lake board push for better enforcement of court-ordered lake levels? And then the other question was, how many lakes have legal lake levels set by the state? I don't know if any of you have. I
don't have that number available. I can tell you what statute lake levels fall under.
Yeah, Paul put that in the chat. Part 307.
307. Yeah.
The vast majority of lake levels are set by circuit courts.
Correct.
I mean, that's
the process to implement comes through Part 307. But it is the court that decides the level,
right,
and issues the order.
Notwithstanding that the general answer that we just gave, there could be some set by the state. They're very rare. I can't think of any, but it'd be something extremely.
Wixom Lake comes to mind.
Who?
I said Wixom Lake comes to mind. Yeah. But that's a whole different topic. But
it's a whole different topic. That's an impoundment. So the other thing I'd like to just clarify for the 66 people that are with us this morning, a lot of the presenters have talked about special assessment district money being taxes, and it's really not a tax, folks. It's an assessment. And so, on your taxes, your tax returns, you can't deduct that amount, that $150 or $200 or whatever the amount is. It's an assessment and not a tax. A tax is a tax. An assessment is an assessment. And we got to get that clarified because it's not being taxed. To have that money assessed on your property, the creation of that special assessment district has to show you a benefit. That money cannot be assessed and taken from you unless there's a corresponding benefit that's going to happen. And people who challenge special assessment districts do that by saying, oh, you're trying to take $150 a year from me. You got to prove to me that it's going to benefit me. And sometimes people setting up SADs, special assessment districts, do not properly develop the data to prove the benefit. And when it goes to the tribunal, they lose. And the whole SAD falls apart. So there is a distinct and important distinction between taxes, which can be used for anything and are taken from you just because you hold property, and assessments, which you have to be able to show a benefit to that particular property for the assessment being levied.
All right. On that note, I'm going to say that we are coming up to 10:55, and if you enjoyed Paul's enthusiasm and wisdom, then I recommend you stay with us, and he will start at 11 a.m. So we'll give you about 5 minutes for a little coffee refresh, maybe a snack, on your conservation legacy. So that'll be the next part of our talk today. Okay, so see you in 5 minutes.